Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, I guess it is. It's early today. I'll watch a football game a little bit today, this evening. So I figured we'd start a little early. I'm going to do one bowl. This is a second turning on a bowl. And this is a rather large one. Good size. About 13 3/8 on the long side. 12 7/8 on the short side. So we're going to be somewhere around the 12 1/4 area. As you can see, it shrunk considerably. Is the right size chuck for that? No. Of course not. Can't be that easy. So we'll do start by truing the outside up. We'll probably redo a tenon and make a tenon bigger. The size bowl should have a bigger tenon on it. But we might as well do ahead of myself there a little bit. Need because I'll actually put this back in between centers to get started. That's how I do it. So we'll do a friction drive. One of those days we're going to drop everything. So that'll fit up there on that. There's a little center point down there. Not real big, but should be big enough. Get this up where we want it. It's not real crucial because it's out of round anyhow, so it's not like we're starting out with a round piece. Quite unround. So of course we'll start by making it round. And we'll start out with our 1/2-inch bowl gouge. My pretty much go-to kind of tool. Start down here. I do need let's just make it round and then I'll decide what we're doing from there. Everything's good and tight, so that's a good place to start. Change one little thing there. Almost big enough it doesn't fit on the screen. I'll zoom out a little bit more. We'll see how bad it wobbles. Should wobble pretty good. It's whether we pick up any vibration with the wobble. A little bit, not too bad. It only take a couple little cuts to go up across here. And make sure the tool rest is tight. Started to move. That's not too bad. Take about a quarter of an inch off of it and it's going to be back into true. That's a pretty good deal. And down there at the bottom, it'll get back into true quicker. Smaller diameter, less movement. I cut it clean enough the first time. It's hard to tell whether I was actually touching the whole way up through there. Sort of felt that we were, but come around here to the top. And we'll straighten up that a little bit. And pick it up. Well, know where we're going, and it's not quite true. I can see a shadow line in there. So we're not quite true up at the top yet. This bowl's going to have some character to it, I believe. That's always a plus. So we'll take back to there. I don't think, yeah, right there's a little, so I thought. Looks like there was a little shadow line there. One tiny little one. A little bit. A little bit more off up here. I'm going to go nice and slow. I don't want the cut to be clean to start with, but when you're doing the bigger ones like this and they're up against just a friction drive like that, you'll have a tendency to get some vibration out here, which I have some vibration marks. Not real bad, but and this stuff is really soft, so not something necessarily to worry about, but there's still an inch, at least an inch thick right there. I think we're going to have to go back and do a little refining here. Because I left, playing around up there, I left a ridge down here, which we don't want. Could. Could actually switch over and use the 40-degree gouge since we're so far out here. It'll give me a little bit cleaner of a cut.
Here's the razor blade. I left just as much of the hump as I did before. Paying too much attention to the tool and not enough attention to the top of the piece. I want my eyes to focus on what's going on up top. We're picking up that harmonic again. Back up a little bit. More pressure down on the tool rest, no pressure going forward. There's the key. Some of these just don't cooperate any way you look at it, but that's certainly a sandable finish. Easily sandable. So now we got to figure out, so we're still at 12, so a third of 12 would be 4. So that's about what the foot size wants to be, which is actually pretty close to what it is now. The real question is going to be, do I want it to leave it flat, a flat foot or a bead? I think it would probably look better with a bead down there. Can actually be sort of a pretty good size bead. Flatten it out a little bit. And I don't want a pointy side. So I was afraid I'm going to tear that up in there, but we'll have to fix that. Now, see if we can fix it with our scraper rather than try and try it once. Shavings look good, but does the piece look good? Another little pass on to take care of it. Might have to get to, really need to get another one of these, or make another one, I should say. And make one that has a sort of a short, sharp point on it. And I could get in that corner down there. And that would make life a whole lot nicer. I think that'll be okay. So, will my little skew get in that corner somewhat? Skew is just a matter of basically a negative rake scraper. It doesn't have a burr on it though. I think that'll work. Tenant, not quite true back up though. I'll do a little bit more to that because I still have a jaw mark on there, so that no, it's not quite true. And now we're there. Actually, I guess there's like no time but the present. Just up and give it a sand while we're here. And it's in this fashion. Make life a little easier. In reverse, and we'll slow the speed down. Start with 120. Not quite there on the bottom. couple little places that sort of picked up the grain a little bit right there. And of course, that is end grain. And from here, it's just a matter of refining the scratches. That's the majority of the outside sanded. The sand is beat up a little bit. I'll do it in reverse. The problem doing beads is getting in the corner very well. I just put a fresh cut edge on there. I'll say keep my head out of the road. I would have been better off. I would have done that first instead of second, but nothing says I can't go back a little bit. With the power sanding, I just you can't quite get into them corners very well. So we'll just go right up through the grits, just like what we've been doing, the whole way to 800. Let's go in the other direction for this. Easier. I'm going to go back and power sand just a little bit, just 6 and 800 down there in the bottom. Just because I know I ran the sandpaper up across there. Get rid of them couple little scratch marks. And that should be that. Things out of the road. And then we'll flip this around. And then we'll get the inside. As you can see, well, you can't see because the truck's in the road. So I think that's the right size chuck too. think. What's the size? Yeah. That's too, that needs to move. Hopefully the tenon's not too long. Oh, actually looks like it would fit in the other jaws better. I don't want them too far open. I get a better grip if they're almost a full circle. Yeah, we're in good shape. As long as this doesn't, it's perfect. Excellent. And if we did everything right, it should spin pretty true. May not necessarily spin perfectly true, but we're not going ultra thin, so a little bit of run out's not going to hurt a thing with this. And we might have to move some things out of the road here because I probably will sort of keep my dust hood close. Spin it sideways. Should be better. Yeah, then we'll start by truing up the edge. Switch cameras. Over to there. I know by virtue of this material will be sort of dusty, so I probably will keep the dust collector running. We'll see once that we're not quite true on the rim. That's where we're going to start. With a little bit of speed. It's pretty good size, so I don't necessarily need to be run super fast. Make sure. Looks good. First things first is we'll get it trued up here. Not quite true there. This one we'll leave pretty thick. I'll probably leave it about 1/2 inch thick, something like that. Be more of a salad bowl, fruit bowl kind of a thing. So it doesn't have to be
super duper thin. Don't really want it to be super thin. But we want it to be consistent thickness. Not happy with that rim yet. I want it to curve in a little bit more than what it does. Don't like where the tool rest is at for that move. My hand putting too much pressure on things. I shouldn't get any vibration marks out there, but I am. But I'm not going to get too concerned about it. I get my tool rest in here a little ways. That way I don't have the big overhang. Feels pretty consistent, which is what we're after. And we're going to end up doing something different with the tool rest. I'm in there pretty much as far as I can go. Certainly not the best cut I could possibly get either. I think what we'll do, we're going to go sharpen some stuff. Although, I may just go to the bigger size tool. Both of which of those are sharp at the moment. I'm going to need a bigger size tool anyhow because I'm going to be getting too much overhang, tool overhang, the 1/2 inch tool. And all I'll do is just get a bunch of vibration out of it. I'm already getting enough compression lines in there now. That's the wrong one. So with a nice sharp tool and a very small bevel, I'm going to go back and see if I can't get rid of some of these compression lines or put more in, one of the two. Right there, we're putting more in than what we had. They will sand out. It's just a matter of a little bit more sanding than what I want to do. And make sure we're not going too deep right there. Feels pretty good. Cut cleanly, but it's just not, I don't know. It's been a while since I've done bowls. I've been doing a lot of other stuff, so a lot of the other stuff I can be a little bit heavier handed than what I can be with the bowl gouges. Switch over to the other 60-degree one. See if it may cooperate a little bit better. It is a piece of white birch. Does have a little bit of, does have some character to it. And I missed my line. Okay, I want to make sure. I was more interested in whether I was starting to curve a little bit soon. Now I can go back here and pick this up.
Definitely leaving a lot of ripple marks in tonight. And this stuff is soft, so it probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to go sharpen the 2 1/2-inch gouges quick. I'm not happy with this up here. I got too many. I mean, that stuff's is been sanded out, but I don't think my scraper probably doesn't have a burr on it either. Just a tiny little like micro burr on there. Tool rest needs a little higher for that. Let's see whether it does me more harm than good. Even though there's nice little fine wispy shavings coming off there, it doesn't mean that it's doing what you want it to do. Because I can also pick up the grain quite quickly. Looks like it's not. I think we'll continue on a little bit more with it. Not really getting any vibration out of it, which is really good. Ultimately, that just saved me probably 10 minutes worth of sanding. I'll even go a little bit more because probably cannot come up along the rim though. That's going to give me some vibration there. I'm always most concerned where the end grain is at, because just because it's a scraper, it doesn't necessarily, it's not foolproof when it comes to end grain. And this, like I say, it's white birch, so it is pretty soft. So it just saved me from going over and sharpening stuff. So from here, looks like a weird thing to do to move the tool rest back, but I'm going to use the big bottom bowl gouge. It's capable of handling the big overhang. It's really what it's designed for. But it needs to be cutting on center level, so that should be good. Like nice little cuts. Get rid of that last little center point down there. And we'll stop and see how we did. Definitely have a transition point right there that we got to deal with. Here's the calipers. Let's see where we're at as far as depth I got down here. Right in there, we're a solid half inch or a little better. So that could actually go down a little bit more. It sort of seems like it's a pretty fair curve. And it certainly can be a little thicker in the bottom, give it a little weight down there. Certainly won't hurt it. I pretty much took care of that. I think that's good. Good enough. Now back to our favorite pastime, sand. I'm gonna try with this paper once. I think I'm about ready to about due for new. They don't last forever, so this is big enough to be able to sand with the 3-inch disc, which will make things a little easier, a little faster. And first things first, round this corner over nice. The further I get in there with the sand, with the drill, the closer my fingers come to that corner. And I don't need to dye it red, so. Now we'll see whether we're done with that. It doesn't look like it. I see a line as it's spinning. It looked like there was a line. Fingers tell all. There's some ripples in there, ripples in there. I'll basically go in both directions. Because as I'm over on the right side, the disc is spinning downward. As I come back over here, it's sort of spinning upwards, which is basically the same as if I stopped the lathe and turned it in the other direction. When you get to be this deep, the center still becomes an issue, leaving a little hump in the middle. I think that's sufficient for the 120. So that was our 150, and we'll go to 180. Make sure I brush that dust out each time. Any little excess bits of grit in there. Certainly not the most glamorous part of wood turning, but kind of a necessary evil. This is better than what I've been doing for the last 2 weekends, basically. We have Pennsylvania has a farm show, and our turning club sets up and demonstrates. So for 2 days, one day each week, each of my weekend, I spent about 5 or 5.5 hours over there demonstrating for people. So I made tops because that's what the kids like. So if you can imagine making tops for 4 or 5 hours straight through, it's a little monotonous and such as that, but kids like it. One sort of last final look on the inside. I think we're good. Well, that's pretty much the turning part of it done. Now we're going to flip it around, change chucks so I can use my damn chuck. And then we'll go back basically where I started, and then we'll finish the outside. And we'll flip it around and finish the inside. And then it'll be ready for buffing some other day this week, maybe. Even probably not. No, we're going away. Won't be around next weekend. We're going to be in Tennessee at the Tennessee Wood Turning Symposium for the weekend. And a couple of days beyond that because I'm on vacation. I have 4 days to work this week, and then I'll be off for the week. So we'll go spend some time in the symposium. And we're going over to and Nashville's like right around the corner, so we're going to go over to Nashville and catch a little, I guess they consider it like a concert or a show at the Grand Ole Opry. Gonna put some paper towel on the bottom of that just so that I don't leave any witness marks with the blue. It shouldn't, it normally doesn't, but a couple paper towels takes care of that problem. With the dust mask or the face shield because I can't see. Dusty enough that I dusted things up. So I'll dust it off with a paper towel. Try and get as much of the dirt off as I can. And a paper towel actually does quite well picking up the dust. Oh, that one didn't get real dirty. Some woods more so than others. Something with open grain. Get us a couple paper towels. Trusty old glove. We'll need the activator. A piece of polyester felt.
go back to overhead, make more sense, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to make up a little applicator pad. It's just a piece of polyester felt inside the paper towel. Acts as a little reservoir. So we're going to use my favorite finish, which will be the Parfix 3408, which is a slow setting CA glue. But we will start on the end grain because it will take more. It'll soak more in. This will also bring it to life, sort of. I'll show you what it's going to look like finished. So we want to get it as close to saturation point as what we can. Like I say, the end grain is going to take more, so that's why I hit the end grain first. I'm going to flip right around to the other end grain. We're going to do the same thing down here. As you can see, it just disappears very, very quickly. I could actually go to the next thicker one up, which is a 3460 for this. Maybe even should have, because this white birch is very porous. So it becomes a little more difficult to get all the pores filled with the 3408. I'm not worried about the little crack in there. I'll show you here in a couple seconds. That's the easiest place to get the glue to go down in. So we'll go over the whole thing. This has a 40-second time delay, so there's not a great big rush. As long as this stuff stays pretty wet, it really doesn't start to set up on you overly quickly. It will get to a point where it starts to set up, and you know you got to move quick to get the excess off. But I'm more interested in trying getting it saturated as best as I can. You can see I'm not really putting more on at this point, a little bit here and there. I'm just spreading out what I have on there for the most part. And then our tiny little crack is the easiest thing. We just dribble it in and let gravity take over. It runs it right straight around, almost right around. We'll get the other side. And that's done. One more little quick rub down, and then we're going to start drying it off, because it will start to set up, and it will stick to the glove. So we'll just take a dry paper towel, and now we're going to wipe it down. As you can see, it sort of starts to get a shine to it, because now we're still spreading glue around at this point. Paper towel's not really overly wet, but I'm going to keep drying it all. This paper towel is sticky, so there's glue on it. But I don't want any excess sitting on the surface, because then it won't cooperate. It'll sit there and not do anything, because it won't. If it can't absorb into the wood, it doesn't really know what to do. It just sits there and sits on the surface, and it'll usually bead up. Nothing else, it'll just sit there and show streaks or whatever, but really quite simple to use. Go back after to the second paper towel, and make sure. I'm looking for it to start to lose its shine, which means I've gotten all the excess off the surface. Right there, it's starting to set up, because my paper towel wanted to drag a little bit right there. A little excess on the surface, and it was starting to set up. It's not the end of the world if it does set up on you. It just means more work. Because I would have to take and sand that off a little bit. Just a little bit of 800 grit sandpaper. Takes it off pretty quick and easy, but it will clog the sandpaper up because it is plastic. End grain, of course, will be our culprit because that's where we put the most amount of material. I think that's good. So we'll go to speed as slow as we can go. And then I am going to activate it so that I can flip it around and do the other side. That'll be one shot up across. I'm about 18 to 24 inches away. Second shot back down through. And that's it. That's all we need. Don't want to spray it up close and personal because we don't need to. We don't want to. Release the tailstock. Try and not get my fingers in it. It generally won't stick to you anyhow, unless you had wet fingers. Then it would stick to you. Yeah, for what I would have said would have been very plain kind of wood. This is a white birch. Came from a local tree, friend of my wife's. And I've gotten quite a bit of it. Used a good bit of it up. So move a couple things around here. And mainly so I can get rid of the tails, get my tailstock back here, and get the live center out so I don't poke myself in the elbow. So now we'll go back to the other chuck. So we get a grip on it. And dust hose out of the road a little bit. I can probably, before I switch back, I'll make a change to this so you can see the whole thing. Maybe it'll make a little bit more sense. Almost the whole thing. I've moved this. That's going to be good enough. I'm going to move this other camera around. And like I say, I've been doing mainly small stuff, so the other camera is up close and personal in sort of a way. So just like the outside, we're gonna clean the inside with our paper towel. Try and get as much dust out as we can. Probably could even use like a microfiber cloth or whatever, but paper towels are a little cheaper than they are. And I'm not totally concerned if I have a little bit of dust left over in there. It'll mainly soak it down into the pores, and this will get buffed anyhow once it's cured, which will take 24 hours. One of this size will get, probably use the abrasive paste on the inside, which you'll see that here in a little bit because I did a small piece earlier, or I should say sort of finished up, working on finishing up a small piece. You can sort of push the envelope a little bit on time. It's worth the time to let it set up for a complete 24 hours though. I will say that much. Before you go after it buffing wise and things like that. If you go after something like this too quick, if I was to try and buff the outside of this now, it would buff all right, but there's also probably places, especially like on the end grain, that could very well still have. What did I do? Oh, gonna say I only got half a picture, but I left something open on my screen. Hang on. I left my little camera control on the screen. I was like, wow, I can only see a little bit of it. Basically, same process as the outside. This time I don't necessarily worry about the end grain quite so much. But as you can see, we went from sort of, I guess you'd call it mild to wild in a way. It's it's a clear liquid, so it's going to bring out the characteristics of the wood. Inside won't take quite as much material as the outside because we've closed up the pores on the outside. It'll still take a fair amount, but we're still doing the same thing. We're trying to saturate it. You can spin these too and put it on, as long as your lathe goes really nice and slow, under 200 RPMs. You don't want to fling super glue around. Be a bad day if you get some in your eyes or your mouth or something like that. Wouldn't be the kind of thing that you'd want to do. This also has no odor, so I would not try this with the normal everyday brand of super glue, because you'd be gagging and everything else right about now. Well, long before this, because the normal stuff has things in it that make it stink. So that's our inside coated. And now we'll dry it off. Well, that's a pretty loaded question. My opinion, yes. I would not hesitate to put a salad in this. Super glue is plastic, for starters. This is a super glue that's made for the medical and cosmetic industry. So it doesn't have all the, one guy explained it to me, it doesn't have all the fillers and stuff like that in that other super glues might have in it. But yes, I wouldn't hesitate to put a salad in this. Now, that being said, I would not necessarily put it on something that somebody was going to use a knife. Although, like I say, it is plastic. Once it's cured, it's just plastic. So, you wouldn't hesitate to go to a fast food place or something like that and eat off of a plastic spoon or fork. I don't know that I would use it for something hot. It is plastic, remember? So it could, I guess it could possibly melt it. And then once it melted it, I don't know that you could actually get it hot enough to actually melt it to the point where it becomes liquid again, but my usual recommendation on that is that if it's going to be used as a fruit bowl or something like that, I mean, not many people are going to use it for a salad bowl. I mean, if you wanted a specific salad bowl or something like that and you were concerned about it, I could finish something like that with just the mineral oil and beeswax, which I have done, but it leaves they're very dull looking. They leave no shine, and they will require maintenance over time, where this won't. This will stay nice and shiny for the duration.
So once it gets its buffing, and then it'll get a couple coats of carnauba wax over top of that yet, which will get put on in with the buffing wheel. In some places it looked like they're still wet for some reason. Won't be wet for long because they'll start to set up on me. That's it. So we'll go back to our nice slow speed so I can put a little activator on it. And at this time of year, I'd probably really almost have to use activator. But if it was, you know, summertime or what have you, for me, I don't necessarily have to use it. The moisture in the air is going to make it cure. Fingers tell all. There is a couple little rough spots on it where it stood to grain up a little bit. But like I say, the buffing, if the buffing don't take care of them, then a little bit of 800 grit sandpaper. Just to knock those little nibs that are sticking up. They could be dust places there's dust too. Worst part is getting the glove off. That's it. That's pretty much, that's all we're going to do to it for today. Put it that way. We'll let it cure. Go back overhead so we can actually see inside. It looks pretty good for a piece of firewood. You know, that's bottom line. That's really what it is. It's what I started with. Well, in the case of this kind of a tree, that would have probably just went to the whatever mulch or whatever that tree company would have done with it. So yeah, that's, what did I say we started with? 12 and so we're about 12 and a half on the rim by about 5 3. Oh, no, it'll be less than that. So it'll be about 5 1/4, something like that. 5. It's 5 3/4 now. 10. So a little over 5 inches deep. That would hold a nice big bowl of fruit, or yeah, something like that. Back before Christmas, I had one of my wife's friends wanted 5 of these right before Christmas, and I'm like, wow, I did push the envelope on. I had some of them already green turned of this size, so I was able to get most of them done that way. There was a couple of them that, even of this size, that got rough turned to about 3/4 of an inch to an inch thick. Put them in the microwave and run the microwave at about 45 seconds on high for about, I don't know, 10 or 12 cycles to get them to release the moisture. And then, you know, finish turning them and sand them up and all that good stuff. So that's kind of another unfinished project. We got a lot of them. This one here has to wait till another day. It won't be tomorrow, for sure. But we have time. I have another one of the white birch ones. This one's going to be another one we'll make a couple, basically probably make a couple cuts on it and stop, because this one cracked on me. This was one that I started for that lady. It doesn't really show it now. There's a crack that runs probably from there to there. As it dries, it actually closed to crack up somewhat. The crack's appearing on the inside, so I'm assuming there's also another one up here on that rim. But in order to fill them, I need to take it down a little bit, and I'm sure it's going to expose
some more cracks, or expose the crack, and then I can fill it. But that'll be all I end up being able to do to it today, because I've learned my lesson on trying to fill cracks, because I will fill it with super glue, and there's just no going back after it too quickly, because if I do, I'll end up with super glue everywhere. Because even though the surface looks as though it's really should mark a better center point on these, it does have a little dimple. We'll make it a bigger dimple. Not super critical because it is out of round, as you can see. Plenty out of round, actually. But we'll solve that problem. But first thing we're going to do, before we try and turn anything else, is we're going to switch, or we're going to go back and sharpen these two bowl gouges. And you can see how dirty my grinder is. And this is CBN grinder. It doesn't necessarily, you don't have stone dust. This is all the black stuff that's on top of this. This grinder actually is white, believe it or not. As you can sort of see if I move it. That's all metal filings off the grinder. Which is all them dollars that they spent for the tools turned into powdery dust, but it's all part of the fun of it. Sharp tools are a must. If you're using dull tools, that's when you can get hurt. Because if a tool's dull, you start to push harder on it because it's not cutting the way you want it to. So that it usually inevitably ends up being pushing too hard on things. This is the 40-degree gouge. Most people would refer to it as a 40-40. There's 40 degrees back, 40-degree nose angle, thereabouts. And I noticed when I was using it that well, it's almost something you almost have to do lathe work. Is you got to have sharp tools. This one doesn't like much of a bevel, so I relieve the bevel by hand. So now the bevel's only about 1/8 of an inch long. I don't need to worry about that one. I will do the same thing with the other bowl gouge too. Once I get to the inside of a bowl, not necessarily worried about it on the outside. It really wouldn't be easy with these tools. These tools are 10V steel, so they have a lot more. They have the palladium in them, and that makes them really, really hard. Actually, these are made by Thompson, and they will. I don't think we need the super long one. They will destroy a stone wheel, and that's experience talking there. That's where I started out with, was the stone wheels, like everybody does. That's the place to start. That's what your grinder comes with. I actually upgraded and got a little bit better stone wheels, but what you don't necessarily notice with watching me sharpen something, especially the any of the gouges, spindle gouges or bowl gouges, you only use
the middle. You're really only using the middle part of the wheel. So, yeah, listen. See, this one was a little wet when I started. So it's more out of round than the one that I just did. So we'll bring our speed up slowly till we get a vibration. Just right about there. And we'll just go back just a little bit. I'm not quite sure what I was doing actually with this one. But using these tools on a stone wheel just flat out destroyed the stone wheel in a very short period of time. It just wears a groove right in the middle of it. So then you're back with the diamond dressing wheel or dressing thing to get the wheel back into a true round wheel. Which of course when you do that, then there's a crack showing up. That one as well. So I won't spend much time with this. Could definitely have a little bit cleaner cut. I'm just more concerned about keeping my shape the way it is. I don't want to remove a whole lot of material because I want to fill those cracks before I go super far with it. Actually, it looks like I grabbed that with the really big jaws. So I could do that again. I'm gonna make it a little bit prettier down here. Because we're back in, I think we're back to round. Made it prettier and tore up end grain. Which is not really a big deal at this point, because it's, like I say, we're not going to go very far with this. I'm going to clean up this tenon a little bit and get that back into round. I'm going to use my spindle gouge for that. Probably one of the better tools for it. I could use I have a parting tool that'll do the same thing. Give it a nice flat surface to get a hold of. To sit on, I should say. Clean, crisp corner in there. It doesn't matter that this is out of whack down back here, because all I'm going to do is grab there. So if we take our pencil, our crack is there, and there, and of course we can see that one. That crack we know definitely goes the whole way through, and this one probably is going to go the whole way through too. So undo. Yeah, done with that. I am fortunate enough to own three of the bigger chucks by virtue of a public sale that I went to a while back. And I bought two of these bigger chucks basically for the price of one to buy a new one. So it was a pretty good sale for me. hopefully that's the right one. Pretty sure. Hopefully I didn't take too much. Oh, there we go. Good. It's almost a perfect circle. It's about 1/8 of an inch between the jaws. So even tightening them up as tight as I can go, and if I flip it out and look, it only put teeny tiny little marks on that because it created a complete circle. So a lot of times I will do like the beads and stuff like that on a smaller bowl. I won't do it on a big one like that. But I could actually make that detail in there and grab it with the chuck, and it really doesn't leave any major amounts of marks on it. So we'll clean up the rim first, because we know that's way out of whack. As you can see, considerably out of whack. And we could go back to the end view. Not that one. That one. So in the drying process, they do warp and twist and carry on. The one that I just did was about, what I figure it was, 3/8, between 3/8 and 1/2 an inch out of whack. Let's go this way. Go into the side of the tree, makes the cut easier. Just looking to get it back into a flat, which is good. There's our one little crack. Now I have a razor blade edge that we got to get rid of before we get to doing anything. Just believe me, if you touch that with bare skin, we're going to be dyeing a bowl red in a very big hurry. Just once. This one's going to be more than one. This one will actually be twice. I rough turn these. As you can see, it's this one here. I left this. The bigger kind of the rule of thumb is about 10% of the diameter. Anywhere from 1 inch to 1.25 inches basically is the thickness that I leave them. And it goes in, and I turn them wet. As in wet that it could be throwing water and all that good stuff. I'm not afraid to turn wet wood. Actually, it's actually fun because no dust. No dust, and it turns easier. Tools stay sharper longer. So there again, a piece of wood this size to actually get it to dry. And if you went with the rule of thumb in the lumber world of an inch a year plus a year, so you figure this thing is 5 inches thick, it would take about 6 years or 7 years to dry, and the likelihood of it drying at that thickness without cracking and doing all that good other stuff, I've never really had any success. I do have some stuff that is 4 and 5 inches thick that I cut just by virtue of I get too much of it. So I rough turn them, as many of them as I possibly can, within reason. But rough turning a bowl this size to that shape would be, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes maybe. Especially if I'm not doing it live. If I'm not doing it live, I definitely can do it in a half an hour. Then I just turn. I don't talk. I don't do any of the other silly things that I'm doing now. I just turn. and make a mess. A very big mess, usually. Okay, where's my crack? There's my crack there. So it's further down. Oh, there it is. So even as messed up as that bowl looked when it was spinning, I've only taken about 1/8 of an inch off of this rim on the inside, and it's already back to round. So that's a plus. So just sort of continue my 1/8 of an inch down there. My tool's actually starting to not like that very well by virtue of 3 inches or so of tool hanging over the tool rest. So if I go to a heavier gouge, a 5/8 inch bar, then I can continue my cut. I'm still going to get some vibration out of it. That's just me being lazy and not moving the tool rest. So in all reality, I really wouldn't even have to go down any further than what I am, because I'm going to mess around with the super glue. But I can. I mean, it's done dry. It's dry. It's now dry. So it's just easier to fill the cracks before the thing is finished. The super glue can always be messy. But we'll just make it round the whole way down. And I should knock that sharp edge off there too. And then we're going to inspect our cracks. I try and get rid of sharp edges as I go. Like I say, it's not a pleasant experience because you're always going to touch something. So we're still, even though the rim up here at the rim is probably still a good solid inch, but down below the rim it's about 3/4 of an inch thick, something like that. And this is the kind of thing that I do quite a bit of. Is, if things crack, I try and address them. I don't go after them when they're still wet, because there's really no point. If I would have filled that in, and I see a lot of people do it, I've never had good results with it. It appears to be, yeah. It won't be when it's done. Partially because the fact that the rim is flat. That's also it's kind of a, I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of an optical illusion. And I could leave that rim like that. And sometimes I do, is leave the rim a little bit thicker, and then I will sort of cut back underneath it a little bit. It's just personal preference. I sort of like to round them down in. It's just because somebody's always going to grab it like that. So that's generally what I do with it, is try and grab it like that and say, well, that's not very comfortable because of this ridge here. So that's kind of how I was taught. Pick it up, feel it. If it feels nice in your hands, then hopefully it'll feel nice in somebody else's hands, and they may want to purchase that from you. So now we're going to fill them. This will take me a minute. Get ready. I'm actually going to spray my activator right on that crack on the inside. That's
the crack on the rim is always the pain in the ass crack. Pardon my French, but they're the hardest ones to fill. You can use a little bit of painter's tape on this inside to stop the glue from going everywhere, but that I don't want it. It's also why I sprayed the activator on there first, because once it hits that activator, it's going to start to set up. Here's always the other half of the battle, is to get it somewhere to be able to sit. I'm going to put a little piece of tape on that seal. Okay. Well, and we have multiple choices of colors. I have dabbled in the resin casting worlds a little bit. Actually, my blue is over there. I kind of stick with some sort of basic colors for filling stuff in like this. I think it was actually already filled in with a little bit of maybe a little red or copper maybe. Super glue can be easily colored with mica powder. Actually, when it comes right down to it, it's the only thing I found that will work with this particular super glue. And seeing as how I'm a distributor of it, I get to play, and it isn't really costing me a lot of money to play. A little bit of mica powder. That's probably way too much. A little bit of mica powder. Mica powder is very potent as far as the colorant. So I'm going to use the 3460, which is a little bit thicker super glue than the 3408. So we'll just squirt some in our little paper cup. Really won't be able to necessarily show you what I'm doing, but trust me, we're just mixing up the mica powder and super glue. Get it mixed up nice and well. Sort of the popsicle stick and chips. I've learned not to lay things down on a lathe bed because this creates more of a problem. I got a paper towel because I know my next move is going to be making sloppy messes. Let's start up at this top one. I would put a little drop up at the top. And I move my fat hand out of the road. I can try. I won't be able to get in super tight. But what I did, all I did was dropped it at the top because we're letting gravity help us here. Put a drop up there. It's going to run down across there. Land in the crack. Use my popsicle stick to help it along. And it just sort of sucks it right down into the crack. Hence, that's why the blue tape on the other side. I've learned from too much experience on this stuff is you think the crack doesn't go through to the other side, and you find out in a big hurry that it did, and you just keep dumping the super glue in there, and it's like, my God, that crack is deep. And then you flip the piece over to find out that, yeah, you've run super glue down over everything. And you can I sort of pat it along a little bit. Try and get the air bubbles, because as it sinks down in there, the air bubbles can stay behind a little bit. Thought I mixed up too much, but I might not have mixed up enough. Yeah. Learn by others' mistakes. So this one might be more difficult to get to fill. But we'll do sort of the same process. I just put it up at the top of it. And as it gets down to the crack, it sinks into the crack. This is also why I didn't turn it any thinner. It's actually really a kind of a pain in the bazookas if I run into one of these cracks and this thing would already be like finished thickness wise, that I can't go back and recut, then I have to do this a little bit differently. I would have to, if this was finished piece, finished thickness wise, basically ready to start sanding or what have you, and you run into a crack like this that you want to fill, and you want it colored especially, then I could put a little bit of shellac on this area out around it, because shellac and super glue do not play well together. So it will stop, especially the colored super glue, because this area right here, if I was just to sand that off once it's dry, that blue has sunk into the grain, so it's going to be in there a little ways. So my philosophy is to fill them, if I can, is to do just what I'm doing right now. And if you notice, the super glue hasn't set up in my cup either. Super glue will stay, at least this stuff will. Put it this way. This particular super glue will stay viable for quite some time out in the open like that. It needs something to make it set up, aka moisture. That's also why you don't want to go back after one of these and start turning it. You think you know, a lot of times I will spray the accelerator in this side of the crack as well, just to make it set up quicker down in there. But I know very good and well I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to fill this crack, and that's all I'm going to do to this thing tonight. So it can have probably the best end of a week and a half or 2 weeks to set up and cure. Because if I hit that with accelerator on the surface, which you see most people do, and I will once we get to that point, just so that it doesn't run back out the crack. But just because you accelerate it doesn't mean it's going to set up and start curing underneath that. It only sets up the top layer. So if you can imagine, if I set up the top layer of this and go back and make another cut and cut another 1/16 of an inch off of this, now I've exposed wet super glue underneath. And then it's everywhere. On your face, well, hopefully not on your face shield, but wouldn't be the first one that I've done that way. And plastic on plastic sets up very quickly. And acetone and the whatever that face shield is made out of, whatever plastic that's made out of, it's not a friendly situation. And yes, that's another experience showing there. I ruined one. Because whatever I was doing with super glue or whatever, I got it on my face shield, and I'm like, no big deal. I'll just take a little acetone and clean it off. Yeah, as soon as the acetone hit that plastic of that face shield, it spider webbed it. Have no idea why, but it did. So, whatever, $20 or $25 later, you have a new face shield. They aren't break the bank kind of expensive, but I think the last one that I got, which is what I'm still using. I think it was cheaper, or like $1 or something like that, $1 or $2 more to buy a whole new shield than it was to buy just the replacement clear part, which to me was kind of crazy, but this is also kind of time consuming. Because as that runs down there, it's sinking into the crack. I could have cheated too on something like this. If I wanted to do this in epoxy rather than the super glue, which if the crack is big enough is what I would do, then I get the hot glue gun out and I would create a dam out around this with hot glue. And then you can just pour the epoxy in there and then come back with a heat gun, or I usually use a heat gun. It's not quite as hot. Or a torch to get rid of the air bubbles. That's also another way of filling the cracks. The little I call them this is a design opportunity, because now you have the availability of adding just a little streak of some bright blue color in there. Some people will see it, some people won't. This already has some blue streaking in. The blue streaking in that is actually some spalting, mold, fungus, whatever you want to consider it. Spalting is a fungus. But I was saying earlier, the reason I didn't fill this when the crack appeared, because I sort of rough turned this as to what it was when I started, and I left it on my workbench because I thought it was drier than what it was, because this stuff has been around for quite a number of years. And come back down the next weekend or next week to find out this giant sized crack opened up. And this crack was probably almost wide enough to put that popsicle stick in, as to compare to what it is right now. So if I would have filled that when it first appeared, now the wood would have had nowhere to shrink to and basically close up the crack, so it would have cracked it somewhere else to go with it. That's why I don't get in any big hurry. If they're cracked, and you just let them dry and do what they're going to do, rather than trying to be an overachiever and go after it before it's ready to be going after. Just my philosophy. And I think we're getting there. Never a total guarantee that I'll get it totally full, but I know what the color is, so it's, if it doesn't become, when I go back after it, if it's not totally full, then I can go back and fill it again. We're just about just about out of super glue that I poured out. I think we got it filled good enough. Like I say, I'll take probably another 1/8 of an inch off of this side of it. I will activate the top of it. I'm still spraying at a distance. All I want is that little light mist to land down on top of it. I don't want to spray up close and personal. There's no need for that. You don't want to do that. But as you can see, just that little light mist, it's already set up on the surface. But like I say, it doesn't mean that what's underneath is set up. Our tape held, so we're in good shape. So once again, we'll just sit that over on the back over onto the unfinished zone. Try and sit at that I have a upright. Where I have one. Sort of while we're on the subject of filling stuff. And actually, I could return the outside of this one. Yeah, it's only 630. This is one that has, this is epoxy. This is the Illuminate Clear, what do they call it? Amazing Clear Cast. You can see the remnants of the hot glue out around it. I created a dam and try and get it to sit in the right place so that I could fill that up and keep breaking the air bubbles. And it's almost more time, it is more time consuming to use the epoxy, but that would be way too much super glue to try and fill something of that nature like that. So we can put this on there. This was kind of my wife's kind of strict instructions. She was down here the other week. We were organizing stuff down here. She was trying to get some of the, I have actually I have 2 more workbenches over behind me there, and she didn't think it was very well organized, which it wasn't, because I really haven't been doing much in the way of flat kind of woodworking stuff. So that workbench kind of gets to where it's used to store stuff on rather than a workbench. So we had brought some other organizing stuff down and got some things well organized. And of course, it's so well organized that I was looking for something tonight, a little sanding mandrel, and I couldn't find it. So I don't know where that one disappeared to. So this bowl started out its life just like this, in between centers with a tenon on it. The tenon on it. This also has a little place that this live center actually is a little miniature Morse taper on the inside of this. So that wooden little bit that I left stick out there is tapered. So this should be pretty close to being centered. There again, this was some wood that actually was around for quite a while. I was a little disappointed. This is English walnut. It's kind of pretty once it's done. But when you go cutting into it and all of a sudden there's this little dark area or whatever, and it ended up being quite a big dark area. It was rotten. So it's no longer round because it has dried out more. So we won't get a whole lot of speed out of it. And we're also out of balance up here. I'm just going to use a little sort of a scraping cut. Because hot melt glue, kind of a little bit of a pain to get rid of. Likes to stick to the tool for one. So once I get it down, so I'll have it down to bare wood. Still a big clump of it there. But we definitely have to reduce the diameter of this a little bit. For one, it's no longer, not even close to being round. And that wood, that's kind of the pain to run into some of these bigger voids like that once the piece is already round, because it's kind of hard to create a place to be able to pour the epoxy like that into something that's not flat and get it to stay where you want it to. There, we're back through it. That's the epoxy. That's actually, I think it's the same color blue that I just used with the super glue. The epoxies turn well, fairly well. It can be messy if it's all epoxy, but in this case it's not. It's only just that little area. It will be a little bit harder on my sandpaper when we get to that point. So we'll get the whole thing back around. It has a pretty good size cannon on it. I need that to be round. The other thing the epoxies like to do is chip. So that must have been when I drug up across it. It sort of made a whole bunch of little chips up and through there. So it didn't really do me any favors there. Let's see if I can hit it with the scraper and clean it back up. Also, it didn't help that I was running slow because of it being a little out of balance right there.
You know exactly when you hit the epoxy because the chips all of a sudden turn white. So yeah, it likes the scraper, which is what pretty much all the plastic stuff does. The epoxies, the urethane resin, they all like to be scraped. A sharp edge tool in more of a scraping fashion than a cutting fashion. So that cut it nice and cleanly, no chip out, no tear out or anything like that on it. So that's a plus. It's not quite. I basically need a sharp corner down there in the bottom for the chuck to register into. This will probably become like a beaded foot or something like that once I get that far. One like this, I think we'll flip this around and hollow the inside of it out. Kind of in my best interest to do it that way because we know it's epoxy in there and we could have other issues with the epoxy on the inside. If you get too aggressive with it, you can snap big chunks of it out. And that's not a whole lot of fun because then you get to start over with the epoxy. It should be. I know that's what it was used originally, but we'll see. See whether it's going to. Yep. Just about like the other one. I usually when I do these when they're wet, I will leave that tenon a little bit bigger than what it needs to be. That way when usually once it dries, and now we're back to what it really should be to start with. This one's got a really cute little thing. It's a little, you can't, well, you can see it. A little cute little knob. That would be a real sweetheart of a thing to take your ink it into your hand or your fingers. Adjust this in a little bit. Other way. No, it's going the right way the first time. Bring it in a little closer. Not that you'll be able to see a little bit more, a little bit better what I'm doing. So, start out with our swept back gouge. Change things, we slow the speed down. Make sure that everything is right. What I really need to know is where that stupid little thing is at, which is right about there. That's going to be my first order of business, is going to find that little sucker and just nibble it away, because my hand's going to be entirely too close to that. So we got rid of that little blood maker. So now we basically can hollow it out. Ooh, that's right. We're going to have to bring a little dust collection into it. That's the other advantage of doing things in green wood. You don't have to have that dust collector on. At this point, I'm just sort of giving myself some room to move. Once I get out here a little bit closer to the rim, I sort of started to now. I've sort of repositioned my body a little bit so that I can look on this left side with my left eye and the right side with my right eye. That way I can get the wall thickness pretty good right off the bat without a lot of measuring. It also pays to be a little bit tall in this case. Because I'm able to almost look straight down on the piece. We haven't hit any epoxy yet, I don't think. Haven't seen any chips of it. Nope. But there's part of the, yeah, there's part of the rotten spot. So the epoxy is going to be right below that. So I need to go down a little bit further here. Because I'm running out of room. Because I want to set my wall thickness up here. Because once I set the thickness up there, it's really very difficult to go back to. There's our epoxy coming through to the inside. So we're about 3/8 of an inch, maybe. No, or like 5/16 on these upper rim. That's probably about good enough, especially with the epoxy, and I don't want to make it super thin. If you make it super thin, then people are afraid to pick it up and look at it. But nice and slow and steady through the epoxy. Not quite where I want to be there. I left the ridge, but I want to make sure there's only, you can see there's only a whole lot less of the epoxy going to show through on the inside than what's on the outside, which is okay. Good thing in a way. Feels pretty consistent. Left a little bit of a lump up there though. Not sure that it's going to allow me to go back up there. We're going to try though. I'm going to go in there where I have solid material and pick up the bevel, pick up the cut. And just sort of sweeten that up a little bit. It's still going to have some little ridges in there from the bevel riding on it. That's not too bad though. Maybe. So there's a hump right there. So if I sit my gouge there, definitely dragging some of the epoxy along with it. You see the white streaks appearing. That's a good indication that that's where the epoxy's at. Reposition a little bit, a little closer to the work. Two cutting edges on the gouge, so you might as well use them both. That's why I come back and use the other side to go down. It's all the same cut. It's all going into the side of it's basically into the side of the tree, so it's just as easy. A little bit quicker than doing all the extra cuts in this direction. Saves the edge of the gouge. Should really check to make sure I'm swinging the right curve. You'd be amazed how enough practice with this that your fingers will do a lot for you. That's me pushing on the bevel tonight. Boy, can't win for trying. Oh, well, I could have shortened that up a little bit more, but curve feels pretty good. Just not. Always got to watch where this left hand is at because of that natural edge sticking out there. You saw me quickly move it back because my hand was headed right for it. That's much better. Down here, I'm going to make much smaller cuts, much slower feed rate, because it's spinning a whole lot slower down here than what it was at the top. When a cut gets too big, back off. You really need to heavier gouge though. It's starting to vibrate there. In this pile of chips somewhere. The same grind, so it's not really any different for me to pick up the heavier one versus the lighter one. I even have one that's smaller. I have one that's only 3/8 of an inch diameter bar for doing small work. That's kind of the name of that tune for that one. My wife will be proud of me to actually finish some stuff today. Sort of the same process, except on a smaller scale. These I will go around the outside edge first by hand. There will always be some nice pull marks right there. I will stand out there with it running too, but just have to be a little bit careful. And once again, we could get our fingers wet. Once again, 120 grit paper. I'm just looking to get rid of any of those compression lines and any other tool marks that might be there. Yeah. Gotta have the bottom edge be the only thing touching. When you get out there in the space where it's uninterrupted or interrupted, not round, not solid, whatever you want to consider it. Some light pressure out there. They pretty much have light pressure all the way anyhow. But you must put a lot of pressure on your sanding disc like that, all you're doing is generating heat, which will ruin the sandpaper, ruin the mandrels. Two more grits and we're done with the inside. I sand from 120 to 800. I wouldn't actually have to go to 800. You can, a lot of times I stop at 400, but wouldn't have to go that far. But this has some epoxy in it, so I'm going to wipe out the dust because I think what I'm going to do here. Oh, it goes a lot higher than that. I'm trying to think. Let me think what the highest one is. 2,500. I don't have too many of it. Yeah, I have some. This is actually a sheet sandpaper. Yeah, 2,500. It's not very rough. it's it's not. Even at 800, it's not very rough. The 2,500 is very smooth. And the one that I use is actually a wet dry sandpaper. They do some stuff. They haven't done any in a while. It's another one of those things that basically working on next year's inventory for craft shows and whatnot. I do some hybrid. Trying to think if I have one up here. I'm knocking everything else down. Yeah, there would be a hybrid bottle opener handle. I'll turn some of them. This is a piece of spalted beech in there that has been dried, stabilized, and then this is cast with Alumilite Clear Slow. But in there is the I'm trying to think what they're called. Chameleon flakes. It's kind of a whole process with those. A little bit of black epoxy in there, and then you literally stick them fast to it, and then this will get turned. Those there will get sanded to that level. They'll get sanded. Any of the plastic stuff that has a lot of plastic on it, I will sand them up to that 2,500. And they get sanded wet because the sandpaper that I use is a wet dry sandpaper. So it's 7 o'clock. So I think what I'm going to do here, since this is all sanded and ready to finish, I'm going to finish the inside of that, and then I'm going to call it a night. And I'll come back. Like I said, it'll be 2 weeks before I'm back, but I'll come back and I'll finish the outside of this with the at that point. Thank you for the follow. I'm sorry. Just trying to figure out what the noise was in my ear. My finish of choice is a slow setting CA glue. It does a really good job. I normally put a piece of polyester felt in there, but I don't feel like walking over to the other room to get some. This is what it is. I'm going to use a 3408 single coat. That's all you put on. All that needs to be put on. I try. I try and share what my knowledge is. Put it that way. So one single coat. No, doesn't make it unable.
It's just as able as anything else you use. Super glue is nothing more than liquid plastic. So my opinion on that is if you're willing to eat off of a plastic fork or plastic spoon, whichever, what's the difference? This super glue that I'm using is not the stuff you buy at the hardware store or them kind of places anyhow. This is a super glue that's made for the medical and cosmetic industry. So it doesn't have all the crap in it, for one, that makes it stink. Because you couldn't do this with the fast acting super glue. It would be set up too quick for you. That's it. It's one coat and it's done. I will come back and buff them once they're cured, which is 24 hours. But 24 hours. That's it. Yep. Yeah, it's a 24-hour cure. That's it. 24 hours from now, it'll be as hard as it's ever going to get. So, take that out of there. See if we can get... This is the challenging part, to actually hold something still enough. And get enough light in there to see the epoxy on the inside. This had a void in it. There's a big section on the back side. Nope. No, because this isn't the wonders of this for the wood turning world, and that's really what it's designed for. It's not sitting on the surface. Well, it's small on the inside, but big on the outside. The outside is big as far as the epoxy goes, because it was like a rotten spot there. So, yeah, it just makes it sort of pop out and shine. It's really interesting, and I very seldom ever get it right, because I always put I use mica powder to color it. If you get the mica powder and use less of it, and it would be on something like that the void goes the whole way through. Here, mouse, come over here. Then it can be transparent, which I got one right the other year, and I did the one craft show that we went to was outside, and of course it was, ended up being a nice sunny day, which was wonderful, but the sun was shining right through that. There was a lady walked up to the booth and she says, "That's mine. I gotta have it." She said, "That's too cool." I'm like, "It's all yours, lady. Take it away." But usually I usually get too much of it in, and it's fairly thick. It's still about a little less than 3/8 of an inch thick. So, but yeah. Yeah. It's really a fine line between, especially if you want something to be transparent. Yeah, to me it's very difficult to figure out how much especially with the mica powders or even the dyes. This is semi-transparent. Actually, if I get it up there, I think once I get the other side finished. So with bright enough, yeah. So I mean, with color behind it, or with white light behind it, it's semi-transparent. So once this side gets polished up, it should be better. That's a good save on a piece of wood. Well, once we finish it. I kind of did this ass backwards in some ways tonight. I normally don't finish the inside first. I would be able to put that on up against the jam chuck on that side, finish this side, finish the foot, and then flip it around and finish that. But I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. But come back in 2 weeks and I'll show you what we'll do with it from there. Other than that, that's pretty much going to be it for me tonight. You all just joined. I can show you if I can find it. Oh, here it is. I have to take the chuck off to show you though, because it's too big. I am generally here on Saturday evenings. I was early today. Normally about between 5 and 6 p.m. Eastern time on Saturdays. I will not be here next Saturday for sure because I am going to a wood turning symposium. So I will not be here next week. But after that, I should be here pretty much every Saturday night. We might have to widen things out a bit. Yeah. Didn't know what was a thing. Yep, this is what we did first tonight. Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed. So that one's about 12 and a half, 12 and 5/8 diameter, about 5 inches deep. That's what I did first this afternoon, this evening. This was rough turn green, left to dry for, I don't have a date on it, over a year. Yeah, make a nice fruit bowl. I don't do a whole lot of them. Do a whole lot of them. This is white birch. The pretty white birch trees with the white bark on it. That's what this is. It has some really interesting dark and light areas. There's a little bit of show better on the outside. There's a little bit of spalting lines in it, a little bit of discoloring from this tree was dead when they took it down, I think. So it had already started, and it sat around here for a while outside. So some woods will start that spalting process quite quickly. Yeah, it makes it interesting because it's dark. You have these dark streaks that are dark areas running down through here. Because if it was all this color that you would see right up and through here, it would actually be very kind of plain and boring. The outside's more, it has just enough different color variations to make it kind of interesting. Like I say, this is what I started with tonight. Yeah. So it has been turned, sanded, finished with the same super glue finish. This will get buffed, or the inside of them a lot of times I will use the abrasive paste on the inside just because it's easier than buffing, but the outside will be strictly on the buffing wheel. And I use a buffing compound that comes out of Out of England, I think it is. It's designed to buff plastics and lacquer. So that's what I use. And you go from let me bring that bowl back. This is what you call trying to finish up other stuff rather than starting new stuff. Of course, that was my wife's kind of strict instructions that that's how it's supposed to be doing. So this one we did, this was a rough turn piece. These little guys, you go from giant size to miniature size. Now, which one of them, the big one or the little one, which one of them is harder to turn? Do you think? Harder to get the right shape of. Put it that way. Yeah. Well, see, in the wood turning, exactly. These smaller ones are very challenging. These aren't quite done. I just sanded the back of them off tonight. These are American chestnut. Are you from the States? I should ask that question first. If you are, you'll know that American chestnut is just like the ash trees are now. They disappeared many, many years ago. There's only a handful of them around or whatever. But my wood guy brought me these, basically they're branches. So I'm like, I'd like to give the stuff, I'll turn them all, there's 6 of them. So I'll probably give him 3 or 4 of them back because they do an auction for the Pennsylvania Forestry Association every year. So he can take them back and auction them off. Yeah. Is it cold down there? No, you guys didn't really get the cold. Or did you? What part of Florida? Yeah. They're trying to bring it back. Okay. Well, right now here, it's 18. And I'm in central Pennsylvania. Yeah. It's been very cold here. Yeah. Yeah, the wood turning symposiums, they're coming back. I mean, that's, that whole pandemic thing kind of put a damper on a lot of that stuff. But yeah, a lot of them have come back. So it's an interesting thing to go watch other people that are basically making their living or whatever, demonstrating and stuff like that. And well, yeah, but come June and July when it's 95 degrees out and 95% humidity, yeah, I'll stick with where I'm at. But yeah. No, it's in Tennessee. It's in Franklin, Tennessee. Right. I mean, our summers get pretty hot too. Yeah, this one's in Tennessee. It's almost 11-hour drive for us, but I'm on vacation. That's the reason I'm going to it. Because we really haven't, with the whole COVID thing and all that stuff for them a couple years, and we really haven't gone away on vacation. And I'm on vacation not this coming week, but the following week. And she's like, "We should go somewhere." I'm like, "Okay." And I get an email from the American Wood Turning Association, and lo and behold, there is a symposium in Texas area in Franklin, Tennessee next week. So I'm like, we could go to that because it's right at the beginning of my vacation. So that's what we're going to do. We'll leave Wednesday night and drive partway Wednesday evening, and then the rest of it on Thursday. And then the symposium starts. A little bit of it starts Thursday evening, mainly Friday and Saturday. And we're just going to play it by ear. I think we're going to go to the Grand Ole Opry on Sunday for a show, and then sort of just wander our way back up, or back home, I guess you'd say. We're going to come home a different way than we get down, at least according to her. But, yeah. Be a little vacation time. Yeah, I don't... Hey, you'll like this part. I am a truck driver for a living, but I don't... No, I'm not interested in long distance driving. I don't do it now. I drive for UPS. I don't drive anything over 3.5 hours in one direction. So nah, it'd be fine. That's like I said, I do that for a living. So it's a little bit further than what I would want to drive in one day. But yeah, Lakeland. Yeah, it's in Lakeland. I remember that coming up, but I didn't think. Huh. I did not think that was in. I don't know why I'm thinking it wasn't in Lakeland. Is there? There's not two in Florida, is there? Huh. If you go on the search engine and type in either AAW, or AAW stands for American Association of Wood Turning, you can go on their website, and even as a non-member, I think it would give you the listings of the symposiums that's coming up, and different different types of demonstrations, because there's still people out there that are doing basically the same thing as what I'm doing, in a more constructed kind of a thing. There you go. Thank you for adding that. Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, I was thinking that the Florida one was down closer to Tampa. Okay. I really didn't pay that much attention to it because that would be I'd have to have a little bit different reason to get down to that one, um, but yeah, cool stuff. Yeah. And for me, this will be, well, now we're into the next year, so I'll get to go to this one here in week and a half. That's the big show. That's the AAW sponsored one. The one in Florida is sponsored by sort of the what do you want to call it, the local wood turning clubs. Um, the one in Portland is sponsored by AAW, and it's a really big. They're generally are a really big show, and they also cost considerable amount of money to get into. I mean, the one in Tennessee is costing me, for me and my wife to go, I think it was a little over $300 to get in. So they're not cheap to go to. Some of them are much less, but so I'll go to the one in Tennessee, and then there's one in Virginia in November. That as long as they have it, I will go to that one. That one's about 3 hours away from me. Really nice. It's probably one of the nicer shows that I've been to. It's very simple, laid back. Um, it's in a giant sized building. Okay, right. Yeah, well, I don't. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the one in Tennessee had an early or not. It was just kind of them. I don't know. It's kind of them weird things. I come home. Well, I think that was last week or so, and I'm like, my wife said about going away. I'm like, well, there is a symposium in Tennessee. Well, she's right on it. She was right on it, and she's like, well, you're on vacation. We could go. I'm like, okay, well then let's go. But yeah, I normally try and plan them ahead of time so that just like there, I mean, $50 is $50. And like for me, it's my wife goes along as well, so uh, yeah. Well, I'd like to stick around and chat, but I need to go get a little bite, a little snack, and get stuff ready to go back to work tomorrow. I work Sunday through Thursday, so like I say, 2 weeks Saturday night, um, generally 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I've been trying to start right around 5, but it doesn't always work that way. And there is nobody that I know of to raid into tonight, so we are just going to call it a night. And thanks for chatting. Yep. All right. Thank you. Yep. You all do the same.